And welcome again to another high vibe channeling session for March 22nd, 2026. And today we get the very knowledgeable and humorous and effervescent Serge Grandbois and his higher self, Kris, Kris. And Serge has been at this for over 43 years with Kris. He does in-person workshops, private consultations, on world online outreach, manifesting mindfulness tools, for conscious creations, and the law of attractions. Also, coaching sessions for roadmap for breaking free of personal barriers and achieving empowerment. And he also is an NLP practitioner, certified hypnotherapist, and a certified life coach. Many, many skills.
So that makes me certifiable.
And his channeling has catalyzed is transformative change for individuals across diverse backgrounds from various parts of the world. And we all find Kris very knowledgeable and very humorous as well. And his approach is for mindfulness, conscious creation, and the law of attraction, which he takes to a new and detailed level. And we'll let Serge fill in anything else that he wishes for us to know about himself or about Kris. And please check on his website, channelingkris.com. That's channeling Kris for information on his classes and his other available offerings. Thank you, Serge.
Well, thank you for the very nice intro and for the patient. I had I guess, a time slip moment. It was a little late. And yeah, it's been quite the journey. And even though it's been like 42, 43 years, it feels as if I've just got my foot in the door. And it's not necessarily about finally understanding things or this or that, but just getting a different perspective on myself. And that's, I think, valuable.
I
And are you guys ready? Are you buckled in?
yeah. I
And you
think
can
I
hear
mentioned
okay.
this to the group before too, Serge, but I think it was Kris who told us in one of the groups that we had that the channeling was first and foremost for the individual who was doing the channeling, and then for the other people that they would share it with.
Yeah, I actually can relate to that very much. Because even at the very early onset of working with Kris, I recognized that I had my own feed and I would get information that way as well. And considering my childhood background, which was very abusive, it helped me work my way through a lot of issues and traumas and so on that quite possibly, had it not been for that, I would either be an addict of some sort, an alcoholic, or maybe even dead by now. So it actually really changed the script or narrative of what I considered my life. And that's even from the very early onset. It had a huge impact. But
Thank
thank
you
you
for
for
that.
reminding me.
Well, we're glad you brought all your wisdom and your presence with us as well as your energy. Thanks, Serge.
Thank you. And shall we get the show on the road, as they say? Good. Now we trust that you are comfortable, and we thank you for your consideration. what Joseph just briefly described as to how the beginnings of our interaction with him already brought early change and helped him develop a kind of life that could have been very different otherwise, speaks to something quite important, not just for Joseph, but for everyone. And it speaks about identity, about the self, about ego, and all of these things more or less stitched into a beautiful tapestry of life. And we shall present it as a kind of analogy. We trust that all of you are familiar with the Rubik's Cube. You could, in this metaphor, consider the idea that the personality, the identity, which are a little different, but the identity is like a Rubik's Cube. And each small square itself represents the various personality structures or constructs. Now, some people would like to argue that it is really only functional when they are all in alignment, as if somehow or other you get a prize for having aligned all the small cubes, all the same color on each face. But in reality, a Rubik's Cube is far more interesting when its faces are mixed and matched in different configurations. This is what makes your world so much more interesting. But the idea of a social construct would like to establish a particular rule that all the faces of the cube must all be the same, that your sense of identity should match what society offers you as possible alternatives and not deviate from those particular formations. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Indeed. And in fact, a Rubik's Cube is so much more interesting when all of the facets or phases mix and match. Not because it is chaotic, but because it allows a particular flow. And identity itself must have a certain amount of freedom in order to grow, in order to rise to the occasion and not keep repeating old narratives or patterns that are often based in trauma and fear. Because that is really the kind of structure that society would like you to have. That if you deviate from that, it might be traumatizing or fearful for the rest of society if you break the bonds. And yet, the real fireworks begin when you start realizing that regardless of the configuration, the Rubik's Cube is still whole and complete, regardless of how the small facets of it present themselves. And the same occurs as well with the channeling process as you know it. The faces, the representations, flip, switch, and the individuals grow. It provides do pardon the pun, but it provides a perfect growing medium through which your personality can get in touch with its own roots, what you loosely call the higher self. That inner core of identity is multifaceted. And in fact, we could even bring the metaphor into another area, sometimes referred into science fiction or in physics, what you call the tesseract. Traditionally, the especially in science fiction. A tesseract apparently is a cube-like device that allows to create a quote-unquote channel from one dimensional reality into another. The point being, though, that the tesseract is not about external dimensions, but rather internal dimensions, creating bridges between various authentic personality structures so that the self can experience a broader spectrum, and in this way create a much more solid foundation for the growth of the personalities involved. All of these personality structures need space to grow. And even the singular individual on his daily ventures may never notice that he is not always the same personality from hour to hour or from day to day. There are ups and downs and twists and turns, as if somehow or other the very structure of the identity meanders here and there, exploring the beauty of its structures, the architecture of the personality itself. And there is another beautiful word pronounced, we believe, sonder, which spelled S-O-N-D-E-R. It is said to be at that point when the individual recognizes that not only is the individual the center of his own dramas and reality, but also acknowledges that all the other persons are also the center of their own reality, and that at that point you are a participant in their reality as much as they are in yours. So we just wanted to present that as a means to understand just how beautiful, deep, and loving the whole structure of the personality is beyond anything that you might be able to imagine. Though from time to time you get little glimpses, especially when you play with altered states. Even from breath to breath, your thoughts wander here and there, each one attached to a particular fragment of personality that are stitched together to create a delightful tapestry. Does all of that make sense to you?
Yes, excitingly so. Thank you.
Please feel free if you have any inquiries or observations on what we said or otherwise.
Well, I certainly appreciate the energy and your time and the wisdom that you are giving us. That is a beautiful analogy. My question is not really related to that, but I was curious about the future of channeling over the next couple of decades for our reality, because open contact is going to change many aspects of our society, and there's been a proliferation of channelers. I would imagine in the last 5 years or more that there's probably 1 million more than there were previously. Can you comment on that, please?
In fact, we can tie it into our little presentation, if you like. The more human beings recognize the neuro-flexibility of their thought processes, of their brain and their mind structures, the easier it becomes to accept the possibility that there are other kinds of life forms, humanoid or otherwise, in other dimensions, and that the possibility of an exchange is more than likely. So in some ways, you are preparing yourselves with first-hand experience in that respect. There are many different kinds of intelligences which are spread throughout an incredible spectrum. It isn't just black and white, but multifaceted again. And this recognition pushes the boundaries, the glass ceilings that you have all allowed yourselves to function within over a few millennia out of necessity so that you can understand the structure itself. And once you feel safe within it, you might be able to venture on little side journeys of consciousness, not just the standard collective conscious agreement, but the ones that also hide behind the little trees and the flowers and the bees, if you like, and the birds too, but giving you a much diversified observation of reality away from the standard interpretations. Does that make some sense to you?
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, the people who are channeling now are not only tapping into the vibration of our future, but our future is actually reaching back to us to
Hmm.
help give us that energy and impetus to expand along those avenues of creation.
That is good. And at the same time, it should be considered that the schematics of probabilities is again not black and white. It isn't necessarily this or that. It could be this and that and that and that. In Sanskrit and also in Hindi, there is a saying, neti neti, not this, not that. By a process of elimination, you realize that it isn't just not this and not that, but it is this and that and that and the other thing. You live in a extremely diverse universe. Some of it is not necessarily captured. And that diversity is not necessarily appreciated for those who are anti-diversity, if you get the drift.
I do.
But
Thank
it
you
is
very
an
much.
inevitable conclusion of life that you live in an extremely diverse pool of realities, full of tides and ebbs and flows. For instance, if you see a wave, you could say, oh, that is the ocean, but you would be mistaken. That is one presentation of the ocean, and it isn't the entire ocean. The ocean is a collection of unlimited waves, but a wave does not define the ocean. The same way that a personality doesn't define the self.
So it would be like each wave would be a personality construct for
Yes.
expression of the ocean.
Yes, you could easily say that. And it would lead to other observations, other insights, what we refer to as oddments, little things that drift ever so sweetly into your consciousness, whispering not secrets, but whispering remembrances of you and self and the universe and knowledge that has always been there, just needs your attention so that you can observe it.
Crashing on the shores of reality.
Indeed. And if you notice the shores, the beaches, they do not object to the waves crashing. In fact, they invite the waves. The only one that creates a resistance is the human being.
Very true. And we were talking before about one of your well-known cohorts, we will say, Uncle Seth.
Indeed.
And the discussion came around to um, transcripts and how accurate that they were and related to other channeling sessions, not necessarily Jane's and Rob's and Seth's. But I was curious how accurate those are where words changed here or there in those for, readability or editing choices or
Hmm.
whatever it might be.
Rob, or Joseph, if you like, was an extremely astute individual and did his very level best. That's why they developed their own particular shorthand, which would enable very fast scripting of the words. And in this way, very little, there might have been some editing involved, but very, very little, keeping the transcription to its original intent. Now, do keep in mind that one of the reasons why Uncle Seth chose, one of the reasons Uncle Seth chose to work through Rubert is because of her extensive literary background to facilitate a great flow of words and such conjunctions. The information, and this is described in the works as well, sometimes would come so rapidly that Rubert had to kind of put the brakes on, if you like, and do her level best to deliver the information. So it did greatly hold true to the words.
Thank you. And I kind of figured that was the reality of the book simply because they are so energetic and the frequency and vibration of that material affects us all so profoundly once we get into that material. It's
Indeed.
it's it's been
And you could even consider the very distinct possibility that, yes, Uncle Seth delivered the words through Rupert, which Joseph took down. But the actual reality is in the reader, the individual who opens the books, looks at the page and at the written word, and from those words constructs his or her own observations and reflections and potential growth. So the secret is not in the books. The books trigger the secrets hidden, if you want, or already present but unobserved in the reader. That is why you have these aha moments. Some might even say, I knew it. And this gives the reader, the observer, a greater sense of fulfillment and completion, knowing that all of these odd little thoughts that might have crossed their mind over years of time suddenly are gelled in a completely different configuration. The Rubik's Cube suddenly flips around rapidly, giving a shift in consciousness. That is the game.
and it was masterfully played because many people have gone back and reread portions of the Seth material, and being in a different place, they had completely different viewpoints and
Indeed.
realizations. So it as a living work of creation for reflecting more of our true reality, it's just a marvelous work.
Indeed, many, many individuals, Joseph included, yourself included, would go and reread something you read years before, and you would go, I swear this was not there when I read it the first time. Did they mysteriously print these lines in when I wasn't looking? No. What happened is that your personality structure shifted. It hinged on something else. It hinged not on the values of the external world and social structures, but on the values inherent within your own perspectives, perceptions, and understanding of self. And it will continue to do that. There is no such a thing as a static personality structure. That is equivalent to death.
Which doesn't exist.
When the structure can no longer flow, it more or less dries up. It leaves the environment.
Thank
So
you.
just like plants and trees and so on need water and sunlight and soil and minerals, you all need what is potentially within yourself and not outside. Of course, you need food and all of that, but your true growth and benefits of it as an individual are all internal. That is where reality exists. And it is then displayed on the stage of life in a very Shakespearean fashion.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Kris. Ina?
Okay, let's talk about changes. And yesterday was equinox, and lately, whatever information I see online, and I understand we begin in new times on this planet. So all what we read in the says books, and I follow Elias and other channels, right? And as I understand now, we actually enter the new times. We actually enter the shift, right? And it makes me super excited because I never understood why I'm here and what's the point of my existence here. And now when I listen to all this information, I get so excited. I'm so excited to be alive now. And I feel, yeah, finally, because when we read says books and all of that, it was like a little bit, okay, you're reading books, it's going to happen. But there was a little bit out there, right, in the future. But now I feel it's not the future, it's now, it's here. And as I understand, 2026 is a year one, and it's a new beginning for all of us. So I want your comments, what's happening, and what's happening. I don't know.
Might we have your permission to more or less reframe that a little bit?
Sure.
Now,
Yeah.
on the one hand, you might look at other people around yourself and go, why are they not so excited?
Exactly. I'm like,
And
I'm so
at the same time, at the very same time, your excitement, your seeing this shift is actually a very personal thing. It really has nothing to do with the external world, the world of cars and jobs and all of these things that will eventually be reflected in that environment. But first, the shift begins in you. It is an internal and actually also an eternal, not just internal, but an eternal process. It is a recalibration of everything that you read and studied for decades, and now it is starting to be internalized. So it is you who is shifting. You see, many people, they seek enlightenment, they want to ascend or transcend, and they want to do this and that. Actually, what they are looking for is that inner door that they might be able to open and see the wonders and the wonderment of the self. It has nothing to do with outside, but the outside eventually will reflect that which is inside. And that is very, very important. So what you are sensing is an overflowing of your own joy of shifting. And you can perceive it here, there, because it is in you. It is in the eye of the observer. You are seeing that. Does that make sense to you?
Makes sense, because sometimes I share with somebody who is not in that page, on the same page, and like, what are you talking about? Look outside world, it's terrible. And I'm like, I don't know. I see
Yes.
the beauty. I see new world. I see it's changing. I see it.
Yes,
I see the shift.
indeed. And as you keep in mind that the shifting is actually being done within you, sometimes without even having to mention it to others, just the way you look at things, just the way you respond to them, they might not consciously recognize what's going on, but subconsciously a part of them knows because you are all connected. That rainbow that you have on your background, you see, that is part of all of life, the light spectrum. It exists in everything. So you are rainbow, and the others will eventually see it too. You don't have to put yourself on the plank, as in a pirate ship, to try and convince anyone. You can just be yourself, smile, and internally understand that they might not see it yet, but they will be it. And that is the point. You are that, they will be that too. Does that make some sense to you?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. But I'm excited about like
And who would not be?
ability, like
Who would not? Imagine, if you want, Marie Antoinette, even though she never said that, she said, let them eat cake. What if she did give everyone cake? Everyone would be happy. Nobody would, quote unquote, lose their heads.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yes, you are
yeah.
correct. You can perceive it because it is occurring within you. So you are the perceiver. So your own personality structure has started to loosen quite some time back about the way society wants you to be, about the way family and trauma and all these things. And you have decided you are not going to participate in that. You're not going to repeat the narratives. You are wanting a different story for yourself, and by all means, indulge. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, perfect sense. Yeah, my family is totally like different planet. But I'm actually curious about abilities. Like new abilities. I do have a lot of intuition. My intuition is very good, but telepathic communication or shape-shifting my body or do stuff like that. Like how much is I can do like
That may be a little more difficult. However, you might be able to tap into another personality of yours that is a very artistically inclined individual and create, even if it's rudimentary to begin with, create artwork.
oh,
Do you never thought of yourself as being artistically inclined? But the potential is within you through another personality in another time and space. So through perhaps meditation or dream request, ask your inner self to put you in touch, one form or another. Do not try to set it, just invite it, so that you might get images that you might feel inclined or even almost compelled to draw in one form or another. And initially, even if it is rudimentary, or if you have to, go and play with AI art and visually break down the imagery into words and ask the AI to recreate this, but in a form that you can see. And you might be surprised. And this isn't about describing your so-called spirit guide or lost soul or whatever you want. It is about imagination, because that imagination is the future of mankind. It is the future of your race. You have used your imagination for millenniums but you have often used it against your own best interest. You have imagined yourself in the worst possible scenarios. And then you go, what's going on? Now imagine yourself in the best possible scenarios and see what happens.
Yeah.
That
Well,
is a challenge.
thank you. That sounds beautiful. Yeah.
Indeed.
Sometimes I do actually. Playing with dolphins, flying with dolphins. Swimming with dolphins and flying. Yeah. Yeah.
So have fun because your imagination is the playground of the universe.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Indeed, most welcome.
Thank you very much, Kris, for this co-creation and interaction. We really appreciate it. My question you've largely answered through Ina's question, so I'll try to rephrase it a little
We
differently.
apologize. We apologize. We didn't mean to peek into your mind, but it just happened. We did say
Perfect
earlier on that you're all
synchronicity.
connected. Yes.
Yes, yes. What advice would you give me to navigate during this time period during the shift?
Hmm.
I was going to ask for the whole group, but then you said we each have our own reality. So,
Yes.
uh, so for me particular, do you have any advice?
Hmm. One of the things we would suggest is to read like you've never read before for a very, very
Okay.
specific reason. Enlarge or embiggen your internal vocabulary, and then your internalizations. Again, playing with the imagination. Because you have a nice talent for writing, even though you might not fully recognize it or acknowledge it. You have, in your own mind, you have a nice flow of words and sentence structures. And in fact, sometimes you can be rather poetic in your quiet moments. So try to put that on paper or computer, if you like, whichever works best for you. But to do try handwriting, at least initially, because there is a specific hand, brain, mind connection with handwriting, which, by the way, can also help keep cognition going full blast into advanced age.
Yes.
And then play with words, play with the images that the words make. Invent new words if you like. And consider that your child. Raise that as your own child. Then you will see how that child will help you. If you have ideas that pop into your head out of the blue, don't just toss them and say, I'm not interested right now, I'm doing this. No, reconstruct the configuration of your personality, of your mind, so that when these little oddments, these little stray thoughts come in and they scratch at the door like a kitty cat, open the door and write it down. Always carry with you some kind of pen and paper so you can jot it down. And you will see over perhaps even a short amount of time just how creative you are, and you never gave yourself credit for it. And perhaps even others have said, well, why are you wasting your time with that stuff? Just do it. As Nike is wont to say, just do it.
Very
And
good
you might
advice.
even find in some ways it is as if you are rejuvenating yourself. A dammed up flow of the waters of life suddenly start flowing your way again. Now, we're not
Yes.
saying that you will now write the next War and Peace. It is too much. But discover yourself through that process. You might even find, and we don't want to say something like, oh, this is going to become automatic writing. But we can say that your writing will somehow or other seem to take a little life of its own and lead you by the hand into some nice inner discoveries.
Perfect.
And
That would be
think of
wonderful.
yourself as approximately 30 to 35 years of age. That will
Mhm.
inject a whole flow of fresh energy within you.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. This
Indeed,
has been most
some
helpful.
people are want to say beat the drums of war, and in this case, it is beat the drums of life. So that is a lot of homework.
You had mentioned that I should read a lot, like I
Yes,
never have before. Um, is there particular books that you would recommend?
dictionaries might be boring, but anything that strikes your fancy, especially sci-fi, not
Hmm.
necessarily the ones that are apocalyptic, but the kind of sci-fi, perhaps Asimov or others, that spark an interest in a bright future that may trigger ideas you never entertained or thought of entertaining before, and might string words together in a configuration that would surprise you. So have fun with it. The whole point is have fun.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very,
You're
very
most welcome.
much.
And that spurred some questions on my end. And thank you very much for that segue
And by the way,
intentional.
how is your book doing?
Well, it's actually three books now, but the first book is doing quite well. It's in the final stages, and I am to finish off my part um, by the middle of next week, and then it should be ready for production if we can work out the little details the week following week.
Indeed.
So, um, and while that one does have a life and frequency and vibration of its own, as all creations do, I'm curious about any advice you might have for the other two books. I'm writing a
Hmm.
book with the help of the Tall Whites, which are dictating their sessions, and I am to write my part so their sessions flow within my life, and they will insert their sessions inside my story in the appropriate places.
Hmm. The first question is, how do you feel when you are doing one, book two, book three? Because they are all different, and you are a different personality with each one. And how do you feel with one, two, or three, or perhaps more? Because they are all structured differently.
Uh, it, that's a very interesting question. I'm very excited about all of it. I'm kind of really in awe at the Tall White book simply because it's already been shown to me in its finished form. And they're giving me the direction that I need and telling me when it's time for another session. So I'm kind of like in the production of the book that's being dictated to me, which is a
Yes.
completely different scenario than I would have ever, thought about. It's kind of like what Jane and Rob and Seth did in ways. But the other book I'm very removed from it. It is a hybrid children coloring book. It's an interactive book for parents or guardians or adults to go over with the children human children, and then the human children have to put their own energy and details into it as well. So I am pulling upon or pulling from many different avenues of expression because that is something that I have never done before. And the questions are just questions that come to me that I
Hmm.
believe that the children would have or would spur their ways of thinking. And a lot of this is just given to me, which I am just enamored with that process too, because it's different than the other ones.
Hmm. So the process and the enamoring of it mm, begs the question in each one. It's not necessarily now, what do you feel or how do you feel about it, but who are you with each one? That is what you might look at, because that locks into what we spoke about earlier, the Rubik's Cube and Tesseract, because you are creating shifts into other personality structures. And your own identity is growing as a result. You perceive and see and understand things that most people wouldn't grasp, wouldn't have a notion about, but you do. You are able to sense, how would we say, where other individuals may come from. When they talk to you or ask you questions, you have a sense of the underlying intentionality. And that speaks to a different you, not just the everyday guy, but the one that is behind the everyday, the one that is looking through the eyes. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I've already experienced that, and especially with the Hybrid Children coloring book or interactive book, because I know I'm not writing it from the physical form.
Hmm.
I'm
So
writing it
your
from outside.
personality has more or less slightly shifted to the side to offer the least resistance possible. And in that way, you are able to observe yourself observing the process. And that is a big shift in personality. In fact, if all humans were able to adapt to this kind of shifting, your world will be transformed in a fortnight. But the social constructs, the consensus reality demands that you conform to a certain agenda. But you're breaking with that agenda. Shame on you. No, no, not really. But all of you are doing this by your inquiries. That is where you begin to see change. And ultimately, the change may not necessarily be the one you envision or imagine, but it will still be very, very different than what it is now. So probabilities are never a black and white thing. You will still have some kind of strife in your world, but it may no longer phase you at all, and you will be able to walk right through it.
Thank you. That was astute. It's kind of like our Rubik's Cube. We get to a point we realize, well, we're just one cube in somebody else's in our grander Rubik's Cube. So we're all being played and manipulated in ways
It is a
which
very nice Rubik verse.
I think I'm going to use that again in the future. Thanks for coining that
Indeed.
phrase, the Rubik verse.
Now, we
And
believe, was it Anita we spoke with a few moments ago?
yes,
Hmm. So, when we suggested play with words, invent new words, string words together, have fun with language, this is what we mean. Rubik verse is another small example. Just break the structure. You will not break reality, but you might be able to sidestep or sneak out like someone sneaking out at night and experience life in a different way. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it sounds like continuing a great adventure.
Yes, you are all on an adventure. It isn't good, it isn't bad, it is an adventure.
Mhm.
Take it in stride. Never let
Yes.
anything affect you personally.
Mhm. Very good. Thank you.
Now, does someone else have an observation or inquiry?
I have one more if you can fit one more
We can.
in an
Can
unrelated
you?
subject. Yes, I can. I have the power, and you're accommodating, so I appreciate both of those.
So you are He-Man.
Yeah, the power of Grayskull.
Indeed. In your case, graybeard, but that's fine.
I know from a human point of view, which we are all blessed with, um, things have a beginning and ending, and that, to my knowledge, happens for all physical representations of consciousness. Like you said, when it's done, it dries up, and that consciousness moves to other things, although it always exists. I'm curious about the non-physical entities. I know everything is eternal, but when they ascend, I'm assuming that they still exist in a non-physical form and they never actually end in our way of understanding. Can you?
Indeed. So let's take a play. Let's say Hamlet. How many actors have played Hamlet over the last few centuries? You might not be able to count them because there are Hamlet plays all over the place simultaneously and not. And therefore, there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals playing the role of Hamlet. And once the hour or two is done, they undo the dress and don their own attire and then go about their daily lives. And they may come back the next night and the next night and so on. Yet, Hamlet still exists in that particular way. The actor still exists in their particular way. Only difference is that a certain portion of the time, the actor and the character are not front and center, but they still exist somewhere. Similarly, all beings exist and do not exist simultaneously. The attire of the personality changes from play to play, but the individual does not. So let's say one time you want to play Hamlet and another time you want to play somebody else on stage. But it's still you. You just adjust your personality. You take on the characteristics of the new character. You are still you, and just displayed differently. And yet the play is the thing. The play is everywhere and everything in that sense. So you never stop existing. You just maybe stop playing one character in one play and move on to another in the broad sense. The personality and consciousness, energy, simply can never be dissolved. It is not. Even in the physical sense, you might see, well, this house burnt to the ground, it no longer is. The representation of the house may have disappeared, but the house still exists in somebody's mind.
I appreciate that. And it made me think of Seth too had mentioned to Seth that they, whatever pronoun you wish to use, would not be able to understand the physical life if not for Seth's exploration as physical, because they had never been physical themselves in that way.
Indeed. And there are many such personalities. What they do, because they have no particular interest in this way of a direct physical experience in whatever reality you want. So they might then, say, send an ambassador type personality structure to venture through different consensus realities and gather information.
Excellent, as always.
A reconnaissance mission, if you like, to bring back information. Then they base certain understandings and then move on. They may have then developed an interest to be more personally involved or not and move on.
It's been a delightful evening, Kris. Thank you so much for pleasing
Indeed, it
us.
has. And we thank you all for your collective consideration and kindnesses. And even though Chuck didn't ask any questions, we still recognize that great personality.
Well, I know you can sense my appreciation all the time, whether I ask a question or not. So,
Indeed.
but
And you might notice sometimes certain words flow through your mind, pop up here and there in the
indeed,
discussions with others.
yes, I always know your energy when it's around.
Indeed. And in this way, we thank you also for your consideration and kindness and return Joseph to you.
Thank you, Kris.
I would assume it was pretty energetic.
Yes, and fantastic. I'll be spreading a lot of that knowledge on various Seth groups because there's a Seth theme throughout a lot of the conversation and Q&A.
Mm.
And the Rubik's Cube analogy was great as well. I prefer to be a little mixed up myself.
It's so interesting. Willow's dad has gotten really involved in Rubik's cubes lately and solving them.
It's
Very
I've
synchronous.
seen, yeah, I saw a video, a young Japanese, it's almost a kid, in 2 seconds, like just that, in seconds, he's got it all fixed up, and they're going, holy moly.
Yeah, and to no end. There's one he took less than 4 minutes to solve three Rubik's cubes while he was juggling them.
Wow. Fascinating.
I know. He catches one, he turns it, throws it up in the air, catches the other one, turns it, throws it up in the air. I'm like, oh my gosh. That's a skill set I don't think I would ever try to master.
No, I couldn't do that. I couldn't even think about it, though it's inspiring for sure.
Yeah, well, if it's something that I'm not good at, then I'm finding a shortcut. So somebody asked me to solve the Rubik's Cube, so I just like, well, I can pry all these off and glue them on again if you want me to, but
Well, that's one way to do it. They don't have to know.
that's right. I also have that color of paint, so I can just paint this side and I can paint this side, and we'll get
One
all
big
those
paintbrush.
colors the
Bloom,
way you
bloom, bloom,
want
bloom. Cool. Well, I hope it was fun.
them. Very much so.
Yes, yes.
Always.
Serge, I got very good advice from Kris about my
Cool.
writing, and I
Yes,
really appreciate that. Thank you.
I did as well. Yeah, it was very
Cool.
informative.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care, Serge.
Bye.
And we're going to wrap up this particular session, and then we'll take a short break and come back with me. And I know now who is coming in. So, oops.